Hello, everybody. I thought you might enjoy this little snippet of a video I was just doing to test out my Ecamm software, which this is, and this microphone. Now, I did an hour's worth of randomly talking and painting and exploring a few things, and so I'm going to share with you some of the more coherent things because it literally was just a test to see if visually everything looked all right using my iPhone as a camera and using Ecamm here to run the whole thing and add comments and things like that. And that did work. And I really like Adrian Salisbury's tutorials, so I would recommend him if you're interested in using Ecamm software. And I've learned how to do stream keys and URLs to set up my live streams. So all will be well, and I can live stream privately into YouTube as well at the same time. And depending on what the students want to do in ESL 2025, I will either just go live in Facebook or in both. If everybody joins the Facebook group, that will make it very easy for me. But it doesn't really make a huge difference. It just means setting up in a couple of places first. Because this microphone is great for when I'm moving around. And so that's what I was testing. It's not essential if I'm literally just working on this table here. And this mic does work. It's just that it's obviously slightly temperamental. It worked absolutely fine for over an hour. And then when I ended the broadcast, there was a blip and it just told me the Ecamm flashed up with a beep saying that my microphone working with my phone was no longer functioning. It isn't a huge problem because I think I do get an alert and I can either try and reboot it by coming out of it and going back into it, or I can plug in my Snowball mic. So it's not a huge problem. So I'm very relieved about that. And I just wanted to say, if you watched my previous video, you'd have seen me using Evmux and this little microphone where it went wrong. But I think what that was is I literally just used it straight out of the box, so it possibly didn't have enough charge. You can charge these with a little connector to in my case, my iMac. And the other part of it, which is actually the receiver that goes into the phone, that is charged by the phone. So what I have to do when I'm filming is plug in my phone charger into this part, and then I have a plug up near on my shelf on an extension lead. I'm telling you everything here. And it's all very glamorous. And that is what powers the phone. So the phone is actually being charged while I'm recording, which is great. So that works fine. And I'm also using another software called Camo. Now that is a software that enables my computer to see my phone as a camera, and that is then recognizable by Ecamm. I'm not 100% sure that I need that, but I think for my particular circumstances I do, because I don't have a good internet Wi-Fi signal in this particular shed. I think if I did, or my computer was different, then my phone and my computer would link up automatically through Ecamm anyway, but it doesn't seem to always work. So I think for me, I need it. But yeah, fingers crossed, everything seems to be working okay. And there was one other thing I wanted to say. Yes, in the previous video, I did use Evmux, and that seemed much more like Streamyard. It is more expensive than Ecamm. I'm not using it. I've decided not to, simply because I find that their tutorials were just, for me, and this is a very personal thing, impossible to take in. They have so much music going on behind them. And yes, I'm an older person, so I just find that really irritating. I cannot concentrate on what they're saying because they've got so much music going on. And I can't bear to listen to it. I just can't. So very sorry, Evmux, but I'm out. It could be that I'm impatient and I just don't want to give it a chance. But as far as I'm concerned, I really like the tutorials I found, which I've mentioned in this video. And I feel that in time, I'm going to be able to learn how to do Ecamm in a very professional way. And right now, I've learned enough to run the course that I'm going to be running. What's just happened to me is very interesting. So my microphone went down, this little one here, the connection between it and my phone went. So that has something to do with the internet, and I'm not using Camo right now. So that is a perfect illustration of why I think in my case Camo is important. And I think having that on and that working is what enabled this mic to work properly. I have just reconnected it simply by going out in Ecamm, by going into the sound levels area and deselecting this mic and selecting another one, and then coming back and connecting with this one, and it works again. So that's why. And that just shows you. But if you're there at the control board, it's possible to do. And I think as long as people know what's happening and there's not too much of a break, then it's absolutely fine. So I'm happy with that. I'm feeling a lot more comfortable about operating everything. And yes, it has been a reasonably big learning curve, but it's also really satisfying when you're able to do it. Anyway, enough of that. I hope you enjoy having a little look at me doing some colour mixing in the way that I do. But this is what I want to experiment with, is choosing the colours that I find from this piece of paper, and then really exploring mixing them and finding out what, for example, if I had this colour, what would look an amazing colour next to it. In fact, that is gorgeous. Let me see. Now this palette is lovely, actually. I do really like it. Phthalo blue, cadmium yellow, crimson and Payne's grey. All these colours just come from those. And I think that is really quite amazing. So this is the palette that I'm going to explore. Cadmium yellow hue, phthalo blue and crimson. So if you have a blue, a red and a yellow, and in this case something very dark like Payne's grey, I don't really like using black personally, then you can get a really lovely and wide array of colours. You can actually paint almost any colour. There are certain pinks you probably wouldn't be able to achieve, for which you could use magenta, but as you can see, there are, and this is just when you start exploring, you can make this colour much lighter, all the colours much lighter, all the light colours a lot darker, keep intermixing, and you just create an amazing array of colour. So that's what I'm going to do, and I really enjoy exploring that. Oh, and the other colour, of course, is white, and I'm just going to use gesso for that. So I'm going to be a little bit systematic and add my blobs of colour. I might need a knife for this. Will it actually come out? I'm going to treat myself to some new paint. There we are, very inelegant. Oh, I'm really looking forward to doing this actually. It's been ages. And now I need something to scoop this out with. This is a great palette knife. It really helps get a lot more paint up than the normal standard shaped palette knives. It's a really good one. In fact, I might get some more of these in different sizes. You can get much larger ones. I've obviously got quite a lot of white there. And I think if you're doing this yourself, you're going to find that you want to have either a large piece of paper, which is what I'll use now, to mix on, or ideally more of this. because this is going to, you'll be able to lift the paint off much more easily than you would on a piece of paper. I find this colour quite intriguing, even with that blue, funnily enough. Something about it. So I want to explore those two colours together and then mix more of that into that. So I'll mix both separately first, and I'll start with doing it on my palette. So just take some of the white down here, tiniest bit of blue. You can see how different it is to that. So to change this to that, I'm going to need yellow. It does surprise me. It doesn't seem to be remotely like that, does it? Almost makes me wonder if I had a different sort of paint. How did I get it to be so light and so bright? It's definitely phthalo blue. Let me just check that I've used the right blue. I have. I've used the right blue, but I do wonder if perhaps it was phthalo turquoise that I used. This is very different, isn't it? Still lovely, but really quite different. What do you mean move? Move the cup and oranges? Oh, that's a bit strange. I don't really know what you mean. I definitely will pay attention to where things are when I'm doing it for real. Like get what I'm working on into the middle would be better. I do find it very odd that this blue doesn't seem to be achievable at the moment. Perhaps I had just got too much yellow in it. Well, that's getting closer. Such a subtle thing, colour mixing. Really subtle. I'm getting nice variations, but not. Well, that's, yeah. It is getting there. It is the right blue. I'm getting closer. Still not quite right. Don't know what it is. You see, this colour is, to me, looks like it's quite hard to achieve. You can see why you can spend all day, all week, working on colour. Right, I'm just going to do more over here, which you can't see. So I'm going to take these away, actually, and put them somewhere over there, so that I've got my paint over here, and then I can actually just explore mixing again, so I can still see the swatches, but you can't so much. Maybe if I put them like that, because I really want to try and get that blue or something close to it again. I'm going to use a different brush, and then I'll be a bit more careful about how much blue I use. I start with a intense blue, and then add a tiny bit of white and a tiny bit of yellow. That's getting there. That's not that far off from that. It's like a darker version of this one. And then a tiny bit of white in it. Let's see what that looks like. That's pretty close to this one, isn't it? Pretty close. Perhaps a slightly bluer. Really small bit of yellow. More white. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. So it is possible. And then So that's still way off that. A little bit more white, a little bit more yellow. This is literally like watching paint dry for people. I won't be doing this. You can go and get you can go and get on with your greenhouse making. Mr. B, thank you so much for watching. They are lovely blues. I really do like them. And now I'm going to try and work out how to make this murky golden green over here. So definitely yellow. I'm going to do it in such a way that it'll probably blend in with this because I'm using the same brush. But look at that colour. That's not the colour that's on here. I really like it because it's harmonious immediately with all this lot, because they're so, you're just literally going from one to the other and slightly changing it. And then if I add a tiny bit of red, that'll be interesting, and that will start to take it to this, I think. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks. Bye. Right, I'm just going to add a little bit more to the blue. Yeah, so far the microphone seems to be alright. I think that needs a lot more orange, which means it needs red and yellow to make it into that colour. Let's see. It's pretty close. It's definitely more blue than it is in that sample one over there. That's probably closer to it. Yeah, there it is. Pretty close, I would say. This colour jumps out at me as being, let's see, this one here, as being a lovely colour against, this is why it's so great to have these charts against these. Look at that, beautiful. And that's really on its own, it's quite a sludgy, muddy pink. I'm just going to have a cup of tea and contemplate how I might mix that. And I remember how beautiful that Tharlo blue and crimson together makes such a beautiful purple, which I'll just do up here, just so I can see. Look at that, lovely. And then a bit of white, quite a lot of white, and we'll see. That's obviously how I created that colour. And add a little bit more red to it. Oh, look at that. Just beautiful. What a lovely colour. Now, white, and then a bit more red. And let's touch down on that. So interesting to see how these colours go together. Very different, but beautiful. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to that. Very different, but really quite glowing. A muddy colour that looks quite good with that. I'm just going to wipe the brush off and you'll see how muddy this colour is. It's quite indeterminate, but I think that's the way you get colourful greys. Haven't arrived at this yet, but I will do, I'm sure. I do like that grey. It's quite dark, isn't it? Let's make it much lighter. You see, actually, when you mix like this, even though it's not exactly helpful for creating the recipes, if you know what your foundational colours are, then you can experiment and explore, find colours you love, and then go back and try to recreate them with those colours, and then you work out the proportions of colour that you had. So it is possible, but it takes time. But I think the freedom of actually mixing like this is really enjoyable. It's less systematic than measuring paint. It'll take longer to come back and find the same colour again that you wanted, but it's a great way to discover colours. Now I'm going to go back and try and create this, because I think this dusty pink, look at that, so lovely with that. And there is some of that red in there, and there's some of the blue, and I think there's some of the yellow. What there isn't is Payne's grey. I'm just going to get more red and come here, and then a lot more white. So we've just made a sort of cold pink, and then I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to make it warmer. And we're getting closer, and in fact that is a lovely colour with that anyway. It's just a bit richer, a bit brighter than the colour I'm going for here. But it really isn't far off. If it's still even a colour that I can pick up for the paper. See, that's closer to that. Yeah, there we are. I'll just show it to you. I realise it's gone off camera. That's where it is. But you see, even doing this, I think it tells you a little bit about how you paint and the marks you make. And you can see I'm quite erratic, but I love soft shapes, quite rounded shapes, and cloud-like shapes, which is no surprise to anyone who knows me. That I stare at clouds, I love them, which is quite bizarre. I don't know a lot about them, but I just really enjoy looking at the clouds. Whenever I go to the beach, that's the thing that I notice most. I look up to the sky and I see them floating over and imagine them as different shapes, different things. They say different things to me. And this is where, when you've got colours you love, you can really start to experiment by putting others next to them or around them to see how they respond. See, these two tones, if you blur your eyes, that's almost like the same colour. It isn't, but it's definitely the same value. So those get lost next to each other. But if you put that colour up here, it really stands out. And actually, look, it's gorgeous with that purple. Just going over the top of it as well. Get those lovely effects. I really like those brush marks. So this is another reason why I really like mixing paint like this and discovering colours, because you can discover different techniques and processes at the same time. And I'm going to just make another pink to go up there with, and I'm doing it in my palette on the side, as you see. I'm trying to create something a bit like this. So take a bit of yellow, definitely a bit of blue. And we've got a nice dirty peach, I would say, that is. It is pretty dirty, look at that. It's lighter. I think it needs a little bit more red and a little bit more blue. And then we've got a really dirty, slightly darker pink. Almost a grey, isn't it, that? But I think lovely with this. I think you end up exploring it the way that you would paint abstractly, like this. And going over the top, look at that, you reveal, highlight other colours and shapes. Then make it, it can be as ugly as you like. It's a very different colour palette to me. I still think I want some light pinks, lighter pinks somewhere. And it is interesting as well when you layer up to see what colours stand out over other colours and which ones really blend in, as you can see here by doing this. And always what I do love when you're painting on white paper like this is the white coming through, which is something that I find really difficult when I'm working on a canvas. So that's interesting to me, that I let it be when I'm working like this. I am interested in this muddy pink. So I want to make a big square of it and then think what colours would look great with it, because it is such a neutral colour really. I think the crimson would look amazing, just the pure crimson. Well, not just the pure crimson, but I think that's a colour that would look amazing next to it. So I'm not going to make it pure actually, I'm just going to take some of it in this palette and then mix a little bit of that into it to make sure that it is harmonious. And I think I've got a tiniest bit of green in there as well. And I'm just going to do a stripe right next to it. And that's really strong. And another colour that I noticed, it isn't on here, but it is on here, that I think would look lovely, bearing in mind we've got all these colours and future variations of them. This orange, that looks really lovely. Let me just lift this up, doesn't it? So that orange is obviously this colour mixed with yellow, so I'm actually just going to take some of that and mix it into here, and then take it over to here and mix it into that muted colour. So I'm making sure that these are not jarring. That's not to say that I don't want a very bright colour that would look good with this palette, and actually that's lovely. And so is that blue, but that's particularly lovely. Because I am going to be running experimental still life in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, all the way through half of the year. Now this is going to be, actually I want to make I've got a white and I've got yellow. I want to make a brighter orangey colour. I'm going to test it over here. Yeah, that's lovely. Look at that. Gorgeous. Really good fun doing things like this. Really like that. And I feel like a dark purple would be a good accent colour as well. Something a bit like, oh, I just realised you didn't see that. There we are. Something a bit like this sort of tone here. So another dark colour would be some of that phthalo blue, which is so strong. Some of that, I haven't used any Payne's Grey yet, I've realised. Not in this palette. A lovely dark purple, really contrasting. but just as a tiny element. And if you can imagine, in fact I might do it down here, I'll do a much larger expanse of purple. The balance of a painting is so different if you've got a predominantly dark area and then smaller elements of these versus this balance of a colour. So this is a way you can do little mini studies like this, colour studies, even for very large paintings, just to work out for yourself what overall value your painting is going to have and the overall colour balance as well. It's totally different, and it's not, I don't really like that, but I think it is valid as an example. I'm just going to take another piece of paper, actually, get another piece of paper that I can work on alongside it and do something similar to that, but just not, I feel like a dark painting is something I want to contemplate. So I'm going to mix that colour again, or at least a dark colour, and let's see, that's more blue than purple. Add a bit more of that, add a bit of Payne's grey in this one, and then I'm just going to do something in the same proportions as this, just to think about proportions really, nothing else. Okay, now I want to hide that so I don't get influenced by it. What I can't see though is, I know if I fold this up, I can't see is the colours that I liked from over here. These colours are lovely. So actually I'll turn that around so you can still see those, and I'll put this here and then have a think about those colours I'm mixing. You know, sort of thinking to yourself, well, if this is my painting in terms of that's going to be the most dominant colour, then what other colours am I going to include? And I want to make this harmonious, but I also want to have some colours that pop. So at the moment, you can see I just took some of this dark colour and added it to this purple crimsony colour that I was mixing. So proportionately, maybe I'd want that colour to be important. And perhaps this sort of dirty peach colour, I like that. And I also like the white as well, which is why I've deliberately left that little gap. I'm just going to close it so that I can remind myself that it's the white that lightens this, and that's really nice. I like those colours together. Much prefer it to this here. I want some of that lovely blue that I liked very much. I'll get the really pale one and just see what that looks like. Maybe some of this blue next to it as well. We're blending in. Yeah, isn't that so much nicer? So much nicer than that. So take your time with this, because even look at that. side by side, they look interesting, don't they? That's what I feel. Okay, and then I think I'm tempted to even have a kind of combination of those two. I'll just put a little tiny dab. And the other thing you can do with this, of course, is cut them out. So you can keep on diminishing or increasing certain colours. So if you decide you don't want a great big lump of blue, you could just cut that out and just leave a sliver, and then create another abstract composition just to explore potential colours. I think that yellow is a bit too insipid somehow. It needs to be a bit more powerful. That's nice. Just want to put it next to that to see what it's like. I'm not totally convinced about the yellow, but as I said, I could just cut it out, or I could cover it over with white, make it stronger even. Maybe have one tiny pop of bright red somewhere. Yeah, I think I'm being influenced now by this. So I hope you enjoyed that, and you're all raring to go and explore colour, because I certainly am. I'm going to have a go now on those wooden pieces. Bye.